Hey guys, JHoyt here. Before this video gets started, I just want to say thank you guys for showing love on all of the videos recently. As I've been saying, all of the stats are up, the views, the watch time, minutes watched, everything is up, and including the subscriber count, because the vast majority of you guys are not subscribed. So make sure you go down below, hit that subscribe button, turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload, and don't forget, you can always change your mind later. What's on, guys? JHoyt back with you today. Welcome back to another NHL video. This time we're putting franchise mode to the side, right? That was last video, putting the gameplay on the side. Today, as you're watching this, is the Seattle expansion draft, but for me, it's the day before. So I want to give my predictions of who Seattle might pick. Now, you gotta also realize, obviously, there's always trades that go on. You know, I'll give you a third round pick if you stay away from this player and, you know, you pick someone else, or, you know, maybe they don't have that deal. But, you know, usually a lot, well, at least from the Vegas expansion draft, there was a lot of trades for draft considerations, you know, staying away from certain players. So hopefully we can draft a pretty good team. Obviously, I'm not going to try to make any exceptions in as far as trades go, but you know, obviously there probably will be some trades. So the list, you know, the final list will probably you know, be a lot different than you know, what I'm going to pick. So in this we have all the protected lists confirmed. So this is afterwards. So this is the expansion draft tool on Cap Friendly, not sponsored, but definitely a great tool. And I don't think I can actually go back there, but so if you look back, you can actually see all the players that have been protected by each team. So in this case, this is Anaheim. So I'm not going to go through them all, but obviously you got Silfverberg, Raquel here, Troy Terry, Nicholas Deslauriers, which was really surprising, by the way. Then you go on to Isaac Lundstrom. You got Sam Steele, Max Jones. So they leave Ryan Getzlaf, Adam Henrique, David Backes, Dalton Heinen, Sonny Milano, Derek Grant, Carter Rowney, and obviously you can see the rest of the list here over on the back end: Fowler, Lindholm, and Manson. So they leave, you know, a bunch of defensemen down there, and then goaltenders, they protect John Gibson. No surprise. So every team like down here has all these things done and dusted, but now it's time to pick the players for Seattle. Like I said, no draft exceptions are being in this one. So we have 30 players to draft because Vegas is exempt from the entire draft, which I know some people were you know, making a big deal about. So what are we trying to build around? So Vegas kind of went for a lot of good players, but then also kind of went for some depth players at the same time. So, you know, players like Marc-Andre Fleury were available, or like William Karlsson, or Jonathan Marchessault, or, you know, players like that. But this one, we actually have a lot of big name players that are available to be picked. Now, will there be trades to, you know, stay away from them? Or will Seattle be like, we need to pick that guy because I think it'll be best for the future? So let's start with Anaheim here, right? We have Ryan Getzlaf. I mean, he's got $8 million, you know, probably in the last few years of his career. Would it be smart? No. I'm not going to go through every single player, but Adam Henrique probably would be one of the better options to pick here. Backes, not really happening. Maybe Dalton Heinen will be a pretty decent pick up there. Sonny Milano would be pretty a good pick there. Kevin Shattenkirk on the back end, could you right-hand defenseman? I know are always a hot commodity. Hayden Fleury could be a good pick, but in this one, I'm actually going to pick Adam Henrique from Anaheim. I feel like, you know, give him a good centerman off the bat. Like I said, Heinen and Milano, along with Shattenkirk or Fleury, or even Jacob Larson down there, would probably be, you know, alternatives there. But maybe we'll end up changing it once we get down there. But we'll move down to Arizona as we look at this team here. So recent trade for Andrew Ladd. It was a huge cap dump for the, I think it was what, Islanders, right? So yeah, no question about him. He's definitely not doing that. Pitlick, Broussard, keep going down. Braden Burke, yeah. I mean, maybe you pick some young guys through here. You got a couple of older defensemen that you could pick. Maybe like Jordan Osterley or Ranta and Net. I mean, could be a lot of really good options, but there is one that I see here, and that's going to be Christian Fischer. I just feel like he's the best one because you got a lot of older guys on this roster, and I feel like if they want at least a couple of years out of majority of their picks, I feel like he could be the guy that might have the best chance of getting picked. I mean, maybe you go down there and pick some young guys, but in this case, I'm gonna pick Christian Fischer. So we got 2 forwards, and this one again could be very interesting. Now you have players on this team that could be a great fit for you. But here's the thing. Most of them are all UFAs, so that doesn't guarantee you a contract. So who'd you pick from Boss? I mean, Krejci's there. Obviously always been a great player, but 35 years old, and he's a UFA. So will you want to do that? Probably not. Do you have a chance at getting Taylor Hall? Again, UFA. I'm pretty sure Boston wants to keep him. Andre Kasha, he's an RFA, so that could be a really good option there. Nick Ritchie, kind of same thing. He's an RFA. Wagner's got a couple years left. Corelli is a UFA. Lazar, you start to get down some young guys down here. Who do you got in the back end? John Moore, Mike Riley, Kevin Miller, I believe, retired, so I don't think he will be there. Connor Clifton could be a pretty decent option. Or you look at their goaltenders in Tuukka Rask, Halak, and Booth. I mean, I don't think you'd pick either of those guys. I mean, I know Halak is not going to be there, I think they said. They're officially just parting ways. So it looks like he's not going to get a contract. But if I was playing this safe and I wanted to guarantee myself, one of these players, not really guarantee because he is an RFA, but I'd go down here to Andre Kasha. Either him or actually I think Jake DeBrusk either got protected or isn't here. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm going to go with Andre Kasha just to kind of guarantee a player. I mean, you could go down here and pick like a Wagner, or even go to the back end, pick, John Moore or Mike Riley or Clifton or Lazan or somebody, but I feel like that'd be a pretty good case, right? Good young scoring winger. Could definitely help out a brand new team. But let's go down to Buffalo here, as this one, again, could be interesting, right? A lot of these teams could be very interesting. So you have guys like Jeff Skinner, who waived their no-move contract, but that's also a massive contract for a brand new team. So he's got $9 million cap hit, and he's got 6 years left or something like that on this contract. I think it was a very big overspend on their part. So do they want to go with a big contract, get a winger that hopefully can rebound and put up some points for you, or do you look to the back end, which is kind of where I'm thinking, and maybe get like a Colin Miller, who was, I believe, picked in that Vegas draft? And you already have Jake McCabe, but you have to be careful because Jake McCabe's already a UFA, and Miller's got 1 more year on his contract, or you got a couple of younger guys, or even Matt Irwin, who's a little bit older. But who would I pick here? I mean, would this be the first defenseman you want to take, right? I mean, Jeff Skinner could be a really good pickup here. I mean, just as hopefully a rebounding player. But I'm going to go to the back end, right? Colin Miller, right-hand defensemen are always a hot commodity, and I feel like getting a defenseman from them could be a pretty good deal. Plus, he's got 1 more year on his contract, so you're guaranteed at least a year. But then who knows what happens after that. Let's jump down to Calgary now, right? We have 3 forwards, we have 1 defense, we have no goalies just yet. But let's look at Calgary here, right? Lucic, 2 more years, not really worth it. Derek Ryan, same thing, not a big fan of what he brings to the table. Josh Levo could be a good depth 4th line guy. Matthew Phillips, I could get a young guy. I'm pretty sure he could be picked in this. You go down and get guys like Ronaldo, Brett Ritchie, Buddy Robinson, Simone, I mean, like, I know he had a little bit of, some pretty good years there, or in Pittsburgh when he was playing with Crosby, but for the most part, not really feeling that. I mean, forwards, you don't really got much there. Maybe you take a young guy like Matthew Phillips. I don't really know much about him, but maybe he could be an option. But let's take a look to the back end here. We got Giordano. Again, he's 1 year left on his contract. Are we really feeling that? Probably not. Killington could be a good idea. Again, it's an RFA, so you'd have to sign him. Or Michael Stone, but he's a UFA. Nesterov's UFA. Petrovic is a UFA. I mean, oh boy. I mean, do you want to take like Tyler Parsons as a RFA goaltender, or do you take like Killington and see what happens with him? So we might end up coming back to some of these teams and picking them pick a different player depending on who we pick. But for now, I'm gonna pick Oliver Killington from Calgary. Just a young defensive, maybe just needs a change of scenery. But if you wanted to pick a forward here, maybe go with like Matthew Phillips, and you'd be fine. But you could go with Killington, or you could go with Parsons even in net, just to get some young guys under your belt. But let's jump down to Carolina. This was one of the teams that was actually very surprising to see who they have and see what they would do with their picks. So you have guys like Nino Niederreiter, who would be a very good pickup for Seattle. You'd have at least one more year with him. 28 years old, so still on the better side of 30, but cap hit $5 million, not too bad. Look to the back end though. This one might be where you could go, right? You got Dougie Hamilton, but he's a UFA. You got Jake Gardiner, who could easily be a good pickup for you. You got him for at least 2 more years on his contract. And then you have Jake Bean, who could be a very good up-and-coming left-hand defenseman. Now, if I was Seattle, obviously I want to get the best players possible, and this is down to 2 players for me. And I guess looking at your goaltenders, and you don't really see too much of interesting players there. I think they end up protecting Nedeljkovic, so they expose Reimer and Mrazek. So could be an option there, but they're both UFAs, so that's where he kind of it hurts you a little bit. But I'm looking at kind of 4 main players in these picks, right? I'm looking at Niederreiter as a 4, and then I'm looking at the top 3 defensemen in Hamilton, Gardner, and Bean. I'm not sure what they're going to do with Dougie Hamilton or Jake Bean. I know he's an RFA, but I'm looking at Gardner mainly, given that he's got 2 more years under his contract. But to get a guy like Jake Bean from these guys, or even Niederreiter, that could be a very good deal, right? Which one would I want to pick, though? I'm going to go with Nino Niederreiter just to have this first pick. Will we go back through this and pick someone completely different? We might. I mean, if we have a lot of forwards at the end, we might even go pick Jake Bean. But, getting someone that, is a scorer could definitely help them out. But down to Chicago now, we have not a lot of players actually here. But we have Brett Connolly, who's been a pretty decent scorer over his time. Zach Smith, who was basically a 4th liner turned first liner for Ottawa, then got traded because they signed him to a stupid contract, and kind of do what the Rangers are dealing with right now with Barclay Goodrow trying to get a huge contract for a 4th liner, which just doesn't really make sense. So who would they pick, though? You got some young guys in here, some 23, 24-year-olds. You got Brett Connolly, who's under a couple more years. But this is also the interesting part, was there was rumors that Chicago was trying to trade Nikita Zadorov. And could that happen? I mean, he's an RFA, but he's probably going to want a pretty decent sized contract, for his deals. So who knows what, 3.2 million. I would probably guess, 3.5, to 4.5, maybe 5 million, given that that's usually what the asking prices are for them. We could go to the defensive side with this one. Yeah, goaltenders, there's not much there. But we could take like Zadorov. We could take Brett Connolly. I mean, we already have some scorers on that squad. But let's go with the back end. Let's take a little risk on Nikita Zadorov. Down to Colorado. These guys got knocked out by Vegas in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And this one's going to be really interesting, as you have their captain, Gabriel Landeskog, that has not signed a new contract yet. Brandon Saad, who hasn't signed a new contract yet. Then you have a couple of guys like Donskoy and Comfer, I should say, that have a couple more years left under their belt. A bunch of UFAs after that. And then, of course, you get down to some younger guys and some, AHL, veterans, I guess you'd call them. But here's the interesting part, right? You have guys like Eric Johnson, who have a pretty good cap hit. They still have a couple years under their contracts. So could that be where you go? Could you go with a guy like Donskoy, who's actually, him and Comfer both have, not a lot of money attached to them, only for a couple more years. Defensive-wise, after Johnson, I don't really know too much about the rest of these players. But goaltenders-wise, I mean, if I wanted to play it safe and I wanted to make sure I got a player under my belt, it'd probably be Donskoy, right? He's been a really good player over his time. Not a superstar by any means, but definitely puts up the points, definitely can get stuff done, throughout the entire lineup here. But we're also looking for a goaltender in all this, which is very interesting. But let's keep going down here. So we got the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I actually read something before I started this video that like 80% of people from Columbus were picking Max Domi, which is very interesting. But they also said he's probably going to miss the start of this year. Greg Renko, I think, signed in the KHL, so that would be a complete waste of a pick. But when you look down here, there's not much you can pick from, right? A couple of younger guys in here as you look down there, not too much. On the back end, like I said, I don't really know too much about some of these players, so it's going to be hard to pick any of them. And actually, I forgot that both of their goaltenders are actually exempt from the draft somehow. So I think it's no question, though, Max Domi. I mean, I'm going to go with the other 80% of people. Pretty straightforward pick and pick Domi there. Obviously, still a younger center that, or left wing, whatever position he decides to play, and obviously fits that the role that most people and most teams probably want on their team. Dallas Stars, and this one's going to be interesting because some of the players that I would pick are UFAs, so that kind of ruined that pick there. And then you have in net, you have Ben Bishop, but again, 34 years old. I think isn't he coming off injuries and stuff too, or is he having? I don't remember offhand. But then you also have a young guy down here, 22 years old, that you could pick. So who would you want to pick out of this group? I'm gonna go with a little unorthodox pick here, right? You have some older guys up there that could be a pick. You got a couple of younger players up there. But I'm going to go down here and pick Julius Honka. He was a player that, wasn't happy, so I think they loaned him over to Finland in some case. But I'm going to pick Honka in this one. Change of scenery definitely, could help him and everyone out in this case. But let's go on to Detroit, though. Again, lots of old players, which is going to not help this one at all. So as we're looking through here, there's not really any goalies I'd pick. You got some older defensemen here. I mean, DeKaiser wouldn't be a bad one, but he's got a lot of money attached to him. Stetcher's got another year under 1.7. That's not bad at all. Christian Juice could be a decent pickup as a player that could definitely use a new change of scenery. Or you look down the forward group and you got lots of guys there, right? You have Svechnikov, obviously not the one from Carolina, but the one from Detroit here. That could be a really good pick, right? 24 years old, trying to find his game, trying to find his scoring touch again, and could definitely use a brand new team to hopefully explore those skills for him. There's definitely some UFAs up here, with a year or two left on their contract. Again, this is where I think trades would definitely come in and push these trades towards a certain player. But this one, we're going to go with Svechnikov, right? Give him a new change of scenery and see where he goes. But down to the Edmonton Oilers. Now, first things first, they have three defensemen that would be like, oh my gosh, why would you let these guys be exposed? But in this case, Klefbom is going to be out for the entire year, I believe, with an injury, or recovering from an injury, I should say. So I feel like, there's going to be a trade involved there to stay away from him. So I'm kind of thinking of that as well. I'm trying not to play to the trade game here, but that would probably definitely one of my picks. Sounds like Larson may not be re-signing there, so that could be an option. But again, now they'd have to re-sign him. And same thing with Barry. Now I'm guessing one of those players will stay, one of them will go. Now in this one, like I said, I feel like there's going to be a trade involved to probably take James Neal, and they'll probably give up something for it. And like I said, there'll also probably be a trade to stay away from Klefbom and potentially another couple other guys. But in this one, if there isn't any trades made, I'd probably go with Klefbom. But again, you're not going to have him for a year. So who would would you want to take that risk and do that, or would you want to go with a safer bet? Like I said, I feel like it's gonna be James Neal, and I feel like there's gonna be a trade involved just to try to get that off of their books. But this one, I'm going to go down a little bit here to Dominic Cahoon. I feel like a 26-year-old winger that has a ton of upside and has looked really good at times could be the #1 pick here. Because when you look at the back end, you know, the goaltenders, all I see is old, all I see is not very good, and all I see is a bunch of headaches there. So I feel like this one could be interesting. A lot of people probably picking Clefbaum. Some people probably picking Larson. But I think it's going to be Neal with some trade attached to it. But this one, we're going to pick Dominic Cahoon. Down to the Florida Panthers. Now, this was where, you know, some out of this video context is going to come in. So it sounds like Chris Driedger back here at the back end is signing a contract with Seattle. So I'm not sure if that means they are picking him and then they're going to be signing him or what. But in the case that it's not him, let's look through and see, you know, what we'd want to do with a potential pick here. So you got Vetrano, who's got one more year under his contract. Wenberg would be a pretty good pick, a young center, you know, trying to find his role. Achari, I should say, should be a decent little pick there. Yes, again, younger guys. To the back end, though, you got Strawman for another year. Montour's a UFA. Nudavara's got another year. Gudis has got a couple of years left. But in the case that we're going to say that it counts as signing if you're picking them, we're going to go with Chris Driedger in net. So that also gives us our first goalie. Down to the LA Kings. And we do have some young players in this one, down to 22, 23 years old, which all could be pretty good picks. You have in net Jonathan Quick, which is a notable name, but I just don't think he's going to be picked, just given he's 35, got a couple years left on his contract, and hasn't really looked great as of recently. But you also have guys like Ole Mata, who used to be a big part of Pittsburgh, then kind of got traded and, you know, just hasn't really done too much since then. Then you also have some interesting guys like Austin Wagner or Blake Lizotte, I'm going to go with. I don't really know, but a couple of younger guys there that, you know, are trying to find their way. Brendan Lemieux as well. But let's go to, what do we kind of need here? We have 8 forwards already and 4 defensemen. But let's go with Austin Wagner. I know he was a big part of LA. But let's go see if Seattle wants a bigger body that is used to playing physical. I think this could be our second goalie when we look through everything here, because when I look at forwards, I see UFAs, I see players that, you know, aren't really you know, the greatest anymore, and then I see some young guys after that, along with some older guys, you know, just trying to hang on to a hockey job. But then on the back end, same thing. I don't really see too much there. So what would you want to pick? I'm gonna go in net here, right? Kaapo Kähkönen has been a pretty decent pick for Minnesota, and I'm gonna pick him, right? 24 years old. I think he had really good numbers last year. And obviously could be a really good goalie of the future for Seattle. But we're going to go with Kähkönen there. Could pick a couple other players here. I mean, you got it. You know, some guys like Mason Shaw here. Solikov could be a decent option. But we're going to go with Kähkönen in net. Now, this one could be a very controversial pick, because there's a lot of good options here for Montreal, right? You have Carey Price in net, who's still got 5 years left on his contract at $10.5 million. Then you also have guys like Shea Weber, but he also has 5 years left on his contract, and they're both, you know, getting older, and who knows how much longer they'll be able to keep competing for. Or you have guys like Jonathan Drouin up here, who's still got a couple of years left as a young scoring winger. Or you could look down here, have like Paul Byron, who has played a pretty big part for Montreal's run. And then Philip Deneau sounds like he's going to want a pretty good-sized contract in his own right. Or, of course, you look down here, you got some younger guys. But you have like Cale Fleury, who could be a pretty good pick. Again, I feel like that's where a trade would come in, and, you know, for draft considerations to stay away from him or stay away from certain players. But I believe Price is going to be out for a bit, I think, with injury, if I remember correctly. I could be totally wrong here. But in the case that they don't take Carey Price, in the case they don't take Shea Weber, I think Weber's going to be out for a while with injury as well. That, you know, those two are probably not going to be the picks there. But I'm going to go over here for Jonathan Drouin. You know, Carey Price could be a very interesting pick for them, but I just don't feel like they're gonna be willing to take on that contract at $10.5 million for the next 5 years for a goaltender that, you know, has been pretty good over his career, but, you know, who knows how long that's gonna you know, keep going. But, you know, they might want to take him over a guy like Drouin or a guy like Tatar or Byron or any of those guys. But, you know, I'm going to go with Jonathan Drouin, where I'm going to play it a little bit safer as, you know, younger players willing to learn and grow and you know, have a similar outcome as Vegas. Down to Nashville. Now, this one, again, could be very interesting because you have a lot of guys on here that you'd probably be pretty surprised about, like a Matt Duchene or Ryan Johansson, which arguably are two of their top centermen on that roster, but both have big contracts, both have 4 years and 5 years left on that deal. Not really seeing too much. I mean, you could go with Allard. I don't really know too much about him, but young right-hand defenseman could be a decent pick. And then Rene actually retired, so definitely not going to be picking him. And then Ingram could be a good depth goaltender, but who knows where you want to go with that one. But in this one, unless there was a trade involved, again, I know I'm not trying to bring trades into it, but I feel like it's going to be whoever you want between Duchene or Johansson. If I had to pick one, I'd probably pick Johansson, just given that he's got 2 years younger in his favor, and he's got one less year for his contract. So I'm going to go with Johansson. Don't know what that could do, but it definitely gives you a top-line center immediately. Down to the New Jersey Devils. And this one, again, they have got a lot of young players that they have, you know, exposed and could be taken. But in this one, I don't know, because there's a lot of risks with some of these players, right? You look, at least let's start in net, right? Dell didn't have a good year last year, but I think they might end up re-signing him. The other two goalies are not the greatest. Look at their back end. PK Subban has declined majorly and is definitely not worth that $9 million. But good thing is he's only got one more year on that deal. We've got like Ryan Murray, who could be a good pickup, but he's a UFA, so you're not really guaranteed that signing. But one player that could be really interesting is Will Butcher, a player that, you know, started his career with, you know, potential under his belt, but then, you know, kind of got thrown out and was a healthy scratch, I believe, for most of last year, and then got in, you know, here and there into the lineup. Or you look down, you have some other younger players here. But this one, again, it might be a trade involved to maybe take PK Subban to try to get that contract off their books. But on this one, I'm going to go with Will Butcher, right? Good young defenseman, still trying to find his way. Could be a pretty good offensive defenseman for you, quarterbacking your power play, and gives you a pretty good pick, right? You could take a guy like Andreas Johnson or Johansson or whatever it is, or Merkley or even Studenich or any guys like that, you know, that have showed promise. But I think Butcher might be the best choice here. Down to the New York Islanders, one of the teams that made a pretty good run in the playoffs, at least. So what I see is goaltenders that, you know, aren't good. Defensemen, no one I'm really interested in as far as all those guys go. But then here's the big thing. You have a lot of forwards here that you really could be interested in. You have guys like Eberle, you have guys like Bailey, you keep going down, you have like Komarov, those guys are UFAs, Panic, who they just got, or you look down here, and I also see a few good young players, a couple of them that may need a brand new scenery to succeed, and Kiefer Bellows could be a good pick here. You also have Michael Del Call and Joshua Ho-Sang. I feel like it's going to be one of those good young players, but for the case of this, I'm actually going to go with one of them, even though, you know, if you go with a guy like Eberle or Bailey, those guys still got a couple of years left on their contract. But we're going to go with the younger player. We're going to go with Kiefer Bellows and give them a good young prospect that is still, you know, finding his way. So down to the other New York team, the New York Rangers. Now, these guys just got Barclay Goodrow from the Tampa Bay Lightning for a 7th-round pick, but also sounds like he's going to want a big contract. I'm talking like 6 years, $3-point-something million, and they'd make a huge mistake if they sign him to that. So I don't feel like that'd be a good option. You got some good younger players here. But here's where the interesting one is. I'm going to go to the back end for this one. Anthony D'Angelo, if they don't buy him out, which I don't think they have, I'm going to pick D'Angelo, right? I feel like if they just get rid of him in this deal, they kind of do the same idea as a buyout and just let him be exposed to Seattle, and they let him just, get off their team and move on from that situation. Down to the Ottawa Senators. How many players have we drafted? We drafted 20 already. That's insane. But for the Ottawa Senators, right, you have some good veteran forwards here. You definitely got some younger players. But in this one, I'm actually going to go to the goaltenders spot and pick Matt Murray, right? A player that's won multiple Stanley Cups, has been the goaltender there. I think Pittsburgh made a mistake on getting rid of him. I know obviously he didn't have the greatest year in Ottawa, but out of all the players you could possibly pick from here, I mean, there's a couple players you could probably also pick, like Dadonov or Tierney, or if you look down there, there's some other players that you could pick, to the back end. Not really feeling too much of them, but I feel like Matt Murray could be a good pick there. I definitely feel like he could flourish in Seattle. But that moves us on to the Philadelphia Flyers. Now we're 2 forwards away from the minimum forwards. We're 3 away from the ones on defense. And I see some really interesting picks here, right? I look to the forwards. I see Voracek, Van Riemsdyk, 2 players that have been, always been really good players in the league, but also their cap hits and their age have kind of gotten ahead of them. So highly unlikely that, they take them, but maybe they want that at the same time, guarantee themselves a player, both 2 players that have pretty good histories of putting up points and putting the puck in the back of the net. Or you look to the back end and see a guy like Gostisbehere or even Haig down here. Or I think Samuel Morin is another one. I don't know why he's listed as left wing, because I'm pretty sure he's a defenseman. But could be a battle between James Van Riemsdyk, Jacob Voracek, and Shane Gostisbehere. But this one, let's give him another good left-handed defenseman in Gostisbehere. I think he could definitely use a change of scenery there. I know they, were trying to get rid of him at one point, but who knows what that's going to be now. But let's pick Gostisbehere, give him another defenseman, and see where it goes from there. Down to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And this one, we could pick guys like Zucker or Tanev. I shouldn't even say probably. They definitely want to get those 2 off of their books. I feel like they made massive mistakes. And I don't remember who signed them to those deals, but they definitely made a mistake with that one. But again, this is where I feel like a trade would come into play. But let's see. I mean, Zucker, a couple years left at $5.5 million. Tanev with a few more than that, but a lower cap hit. Or you look to the back end, Marcus Peterson could be an interesting option there. As far as younger players, of who I'd pick, I mean, I'm not really seeing too much of anything that I would be willing to take on as a new GM in the league. But I mean, Patterson could be a good option. 25 years old, has a few years left on his contract. But again, I feel like this is where a trade's going to come in. But I'm going to pick Jason Zucker, right? Trying to get him off their books would definitely help them out. And I feel like he maybe, again, could use a, change of scenery. Down to the San Jose Sharks. And we got not a lot of options here, right? This is probably the least amount of players that I've seen as far as a team goes so far. So you have guys in net like Martin Jones, but I don't know if you'd be doing that. Plus, we already have 3 goalies that, we already have Murray, we already have Dreger, and we already have Kakinen, I think, from Minnesota. So I don't feel like drafting Jones would be a good idea. Got a couple of younger defensemen here. You got a couple of younger forwards. Who would even be a good pick here? Maybe like a Ryan Donato, right? He's an RFA, low cap hit, 25 years old, still have time to grow. Dylan Gambrell, I know they were pretty high on Matt Nieto, who's got a couple years left. I don't think they'd want to draft Patrick Marleau, even though he's a legendary player. But let's go with Ryan Donato, right? RFA this year, just trying to get some good young players under their belt. But here's a interesting one. So the St. Louis Blues are our next team up. So you look at goaltenders. I'm not seeing too much. I mean, you got Fitzpatrick there that could be a good option. Defensive-wise, I can only kind of see one option there, and Vince Dunn. Then you also have some younger players down there as well. But in this one, I don't feel like this would be the hardest pick in the world unless there's a trade made in this one. Vladimir Terrasenko apparently requested a trade and wants out. So what better than to give him up in the expansion draft? Again, I feel like there's going to be a trade attached to that, but I feel like that's just the easiest pickup we've had so far. Down to our final 5 players from our last 5 teams. We do need a couple of defensemen as we look down through here. But who's going to be the one? So this is another team where I feel like there's going to be a trade made, especially with Tampa Bay's situation. Probably going to try to clear some salary. We have Palat, who I know they're pretty high on. Gord, they just signed him to a pretty big deal. Johnson, who's been a third, fourth liner for him ever since Point and Stamkos came into the deal, along with Cirelli. And I mean, like I said in my video when I talked about Tampa Bay, you guys should go back and watch it because it's a pretty good video. But I feel like there's going to be a trade. I feel like it'd be an obvious pick to pick one of the first 4 forwards here, or a guy like, where is he, Cal Foote, a good young right-hand defenseman. But again, that's where I feel like a trade would come in to stay away from him. But in this one, I'm going to pick Killorn. Him or Gord would probably be my 2 picks, just given that I'm a little bit higher on Johnson and Palat than I am on Gord and Killorn. But maybe they'll try to give a little 2-for-1, get Gord and Killorn off the books at the same time, and hopefully they'll be a little bit better with their cap going forward. So our next team is the Toronto Maple Leafs, and this one has a few young players that definitely could be on the move. One of them being Alexander Kerfoot. Jared McCann's down here as well. Then you look down at guys like Pierre Enval. I suck at names. But he could be on the move there. Or you look to the back end. I'm not really interested in the other 3 defensemen, but Travis Dermott could be a good pickup. Or you've got like Frederick Anderson in the net, but I don't feel like he's going to get picked just because he's a UFA. Let's go with Jared McCann, right? An RFA after next year, and I know they still need a couple of defensemen here, and probably would pick Dermott in this case, but we'll see what the numbers look like as we continue on here down with the Vancouver Canucks. So again, this is where I feel like a trade would come in to try to get Louis Eriksson off their books. But if we're not going to do that, a guy like Jake Virtanen could be a pretty good option, or a guy like Cole Lind, a good young player that's still, again, finding his way. Or you look at their defensive side, they got guys like Guillaume Brisebois that could be a good pick, or they have Braden Holtby in net, which, again, probably not going to pick a goaltender. But like I said, I feel like it's going to be Louis Eriksson and maybe another player just to try to get it off their books. But in this case, I'm going to go down here and pick Jake Virtanen. I think it was, 6th overall pick a few years back, and just hasn't really found his footing just yet. Down to the Washington Capitals. We still need a couple of defensemen, as you could probably go up and swap some younger players for another. And who do we have here? Justin Schultz, Brendan Dillon, Nicholas Jensen, Kempney all have one more year at least. Chara, Lucas Johansson could be a good option. He's pretty good in his own right. Ovechkin actually is a UFA, so that's probably why they left him exposed, because they're probably not going to re-sign. Well, they're probably going to re-sign him in Washington, and he's probably not going to want to go to Seattle. But let's go with a kind of low-cost player, and it also helps out the defense. You could probably pick any of these players and it'd make a pretty good impact. But I'm going to go down here to Nick Jensen. 2 years left at $2.5 million. That's not bad, especially given he's a right-hand defenseman, which are always a tough commodity. But we definitely need to pick another defenseman here eventually, whether it's with this pick or with another one. We'll find out. But I know these guys were trying to move Mason Appleton. I don't know why I couldn't say that. But I'm going to pick him in this one. He's a good young player that they've been trying to get rid of anyway, so I'm going to go with him. Now, I know I have to go back up and fix some of this, right? I know max cap hit is over apparently. So I guess we could just do it right from this screen. So we have 30 total players, but this one, I'm just going to change one of the players just to make it compliant. So we're going to unpick Henrique, go to the back end here, and we're going to pick, probably could be either Fleury or Larson, but in this one, we're going to pick, let's go with Fleury, I guess. So again, not really a huge change here, but I'm trying to get a list of all of our players that I've picked. So after all of our picks, this is going to be our final list on your screen now. We got Hayden Fleury from Anaheim, Christian Fischer, right wing from Arizona, Andre Kasha from Boston, Colin Miller from Buffalo, Oliver Killington from Calgary, Nino Niederreiter from Carolina, Nikita Zadorov from Chicago, Jonas Donskoy from Colorado, Max Domi, that's supposed to be Columbus, Julius Honka from Dallas, Evgeny Svechnikov from Detroit, Dominic Cahoon from Edmonton, Chris Dreger from Florida, Austin Wagner from the Kings, Kaapo Kähkönen, the goaltender from Minnesota, Jonathan Drouin from Montreal, Ryan Johansson from Nashville, Will Butcher from the Devils, Kiefer Bellows from the Islanders, Tony DeAngelo from the Rangers, Matt Murray from the Senators, Gossespierre from the Flyers, Jason Zucker from Pittsburgh, Ryan Donato from the Sharks, Vladimir Tarasenko from the St. Louis Blues, Alex Killorn from Tampa Bay, Jared McCann from Toronto, Jake Virtanen from Washington, Nick Jensen from Washington, and last but certainly not least, Mason Appleton from Winnipeg. So after getting all of our players compiled here, as you can see on the right side, and what I realized after putting our players into kind of like a depth chart is we only drafted technically 2 centers. Some of these players might actually play center or wing, you know, depending on, you know, what team they're on or depending on what coach they have or anything. So I do understand that one, but just a general center, or not center, a general depth chart here of some players. Not really in exact order of what it's probably going to be at all. You know, obviously if some of these players are even here, but I'd probably, you know, try to figure out some more centers because yeah, this is a this is a lot of wingers in this case. So I'm not sure if like Appleton or Fisher or Svechnikov or Bellows or Wagner or Cahoon or any of these guys can actually play center, but hey, it's worth a shot. So I ended up putting McCann and Donato in there just to kind of fill in, so that way I'd actually have 4 centers. I don't know if they actually played center, but I think they played center at one point during their career. So make sure to hit that like button down below. Let me know your guys' list down in the comments section below, and we'll see who's right out of all of this mess. And if you haven't yet, or if you're brand new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button down there as well. Turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload, and don't forget, you can always change your mind later. With all that being said, guys, we'll see you in the next one.
In the